Your support helps us bring you programs you love. Go to wyomingpbs.org, click on Support, and become a sustaining member or an annual member. It's easy and secure. Thank you.
Artwork only has to be pretty or represent a feeling. When you're making a tool that morphs into art, the level of fit and finish is what makes that transition.
From apprentice to journeyman, craftsman James Rodebaugh now holds the highest accolade he can achieve from the American Bladesmith Society, that of Master Craftsman. And he manufactures beautiful knives right here in Wyoming. Craftsman James Rodebaugh, next on Wyoming Chronicle.
Funding for this program was provided in part by the Wyoming Public Television Endowment and viewers like you.
James, we're near Carpenter, Wyoming.
Thank you, yes.
And you manufacture knives.
I do.
A master bladesmith.
Yes, I'm a master bladesmith with the American Bladesmith Society.
And how long have you been here in Carpenter?
I moved here in 2006, and it just appealed to me. It reminded me of my Midwestern roots, but still am able to enjoy the fruits of the Rocky Mountains.
When did you start making and manufacturing knives?
I started in about 1996. I joined the American Bladesmith Society in January of 1999 and went full-time at that point.
And you were telling me earlier there's fewer than 100, about 80 master bladesmiths.
There's 80 that are actually active, thereabouts. There's been 126, I think, total. It could be as many as 140. We're doing actually compiling records now to figure that out.
Sure. What does one do to get that status?
You start as an apprentice bladesmith, usually working with a known master smith or an advanced journeyman.
And you were able to do that?
Yes.
Who did you work with?
I worked with Alman T. Barton. Al's since passed away. And I met him the week after I decided to go full-time. Was just really fortuitous.
And this was in California?
Yes. Yeah, that was in the high desert of California.
And he was actually ill at the time?
Yes. He was suffering from cancer.
And he wanted to pass on
as
much as he could to you.
Yes. And I was at a point in my career where I needed a mentor like that was willing to give me everything. There have been others that have influenced me, and one of them would be Tim Hancock out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Tim took me when I was a journeyman or studying for my journeyman and refined my finishing abilities, my design sensibilities, and helped me to think like a master.
Give us a sense of what it means to have a knife that is juried so that you can get your master craftsman status, your master bladesmith status.
You know, I've been in some pretty tight spots in my life. I was a federal law enforcement officer. I was a United States Marine. I would say it's the scariest thing I've ever done. I was a wreck. When I realized that I had succeeded and become a master bladesmith, the relief was
There are
amazing.
functional tests that your knives had to
Absolutely.
endure.
The first thing that we do is we have to go through a function test, the cut and bend test, we call it. And we take a 10-inch bladed knife with a 5-inch handle. For the journeyman test, it's carbon steel. For the master test, it's Damascus that we've made ourselves. We have to cut through a 2x4 twice, and the blade still has to shave. Then we cut through a 1-inch manila rope, free hanging, 6 inches from the bottom.
Just whack it.
Just one little snap cut. And then we put 1/3 of the blade length in a vise, and we put a cheater bar on it, and then we bend that 90 degrees, and it cannot break. It can have a slight crack up to, I think, 1/3 of the blade width or 1/2 inch, whichever is less, and you can still pass. But most of the applicants nowadays, because we've advanced so far thanks to the ABS, we very seldom see a crack. They pass with flying colors most often.
So let's get into having you demonstrate a little bit,
Sure.
James, if we could, what you do.
All right.
You've got a forge here that you're working with.
Yes. This is a small, what we call a turtle shell forge. It runs on propane. I have a piece of 1084 in there right now that is now up to temperature. And what I'll do first is I'll draw a point on this, which is simply a taper. And that's the beginning of the blade.
Okay.
And I'll go to a heavier hammer for this. This is a 5-pound, just kind of like an engineer's hammer. And I'll use the rounding face initially, and I'll alternate rounding to flatting as I go through this. The first step, like I say, is we'll go ahead and draw a point. Okay, now I've got the point mostly formed. I'll go back in and get more heat, and then I'll true that all up.
Not only do you make the blade, of course, you do so much more with the knives. Do you consider yourself a craftsman, or are you an artist? What's the difference in your mind?
I consider myself a master craftsman. And to me, a master craftsman is an artist, but also you have to produce a piece of functional work that will actually do a job, and you have to complete that to a level of fit and finish that takes it a step above mere artwork. Artwork only has to be pretty or represent a feeling. When you're making a tool that morphs into art, the level of fit and finish, I think, is what makes that transition from tool to art, functional art.
How do you continue to learn?
I attend classes and seminars all over the country. I work quite often with other master bladesmiths. We're a very open society. We share knowledge. So we'll refine the point. I'll go to a lighter hammer. So once I've achieved that, then what I'll do, because I'm going to make a raised swedge hunter, is I'll get a little more heat in it. I'll come back here and I'll set a curve here.
How hot are we talking?
We're working at about 1900 degrees right now. So what I'll do now is I'll set that curve over a radius part of the anvil here. And I'll hit half on, half off. And then I'll refine that a little more. Okay, and you can see how we've got now a raised area there. All right, and oddly enough, the edge section will be this, and as I forge the edge in, this will curl up. And I'll show you that now.
Biggest knife you've made so far?
Probably my master's dagger. It was 19 7/8 inches. At the time, it was the largest master dagger that had been submitted to the panel for Master Bladesmith.
When you design, you don't use computers?
No. I see the knife in my head that I want, and so I'll sit down.
And that's not just the blade, that's the handle,
that's
the sheath, that's every part of it.
Right. I'll see a picture in my mind of the knife I want to build, and then oftentimes I'll come to the forge and I'll forge the blade. Sometimes I'll make a template out of Lexan and I'll draw the blade on the anvil and then forge it till it fits inside. And you can see there's some where I've drawn other knives that I've built. And that's a technique that Tim Hancock and I designed back when we were designing an introduction to bladesmithing course for a school out in California. And Tim and I worked for a week together to design this course.
So this part of the process, or is any part of the process more exciting to you? Is this the grunt work part of it, or where are we at?
This to me, I love. This is like poetry to me, to watch a blade grow on the anvil. The heat treat is the science. The fit and finish is the craftsman. This, if there's any part of this that is truly art, this is it right here. This is where it comes from your heart.
Okay.
So now we'll start drawing the edge on this. This out of the way. So you can see now how it's starting to curve up.
Yep, sure can.
And that's kind of my signature style. It's called a raised swedge hunter. In the 70s, when they started the American Bladesmith Society, it was a dying craft. B.R. Hughes, one of the founding members, a dear friend of mine, stated that he thought they'd be lucky if they had 20 members. We just went over 2,000 members the other day, worldwide. Our mission is to preserve and promote the art of the forged blade.
So I've got to ask, severity of the worst burn?
Really, really bad. Let's see. I was doing a demo at the largest blacksmithing convention in the world in Ohio this year, and I was doing mosaic Damascus.
So you weren't by yourself in your shop, hidden away from folks?
No, I was in front of about 100 people in the stands and doing a demo on mosaic Damascus, and a piece of slag flew off, landed on my shoulder, ignited my shirt, cotton shirt, and I couldn't stop. You know, there was a pretty good puff of smoke, and in fact, I think it's on video.
Uh-oh.
And I had to keep working, and I couldn't pull it off. So I think that the scab just fell off from that a couple weeks ago, and that was in August.
Oh my goodness.
So.
And we're in December now.
Yeah.
Ouch. Have you cut yourself?
Many times.
Yeah.
I stabbed myself with a Persian dagger by turning when it was in a vise and I was finishing it. That was a ridiculous mistake. My hands there's little white scars all over my hands. It's part of the job.
Your apron says it's a magic apron.
That was a joke from one of my students.
Okay.
Because I was doing a forge weld. He was having trouble with it. And he said, there's something you're doing that's magic. And I had my apron sitting there and wasn't paying attention. And he went over and wrote magic apron on it. And so and I just am too cheap to buy a new apron. So now we're going to bring this edge down quite a bit more. One of the things I guess I'm known for is forging really close to shape. And now I'm starting to draw the distal taper into this blade. And I'm going to leave it a little thick at the tip so I don't burn the tip off. And I'm going to start pulling this, what we call the choil, down. And one of the ways you can tell a properly forged blade is that you'll always have a dropped edge when you're forging in your edge bevels. The steel has to go somewhere. Steel doesn't compress. It has to move. So as I forge this thinner, that thickens the spine, and it curves up.
Okay. What types of knives you make are in demand?
I make buoys, hunters, daggers, folders, axes, hatchets, froes, you name it, draw knives, any kind of bladed arrowheads, spearheads.
Are they all a challenge? Do you prefer one over the other?
When I first started, I was known for my Bowie knives, and that was really kind of neat, and I still do a lot of Bowie knives. Now I probably have a better name as a maker of hunting and bird and trout type knives. I kind of developed a style that is fairly in demand.
So if I were to ask someone what a James Rodebaugh knife means, what would they tell me? What is it? What is at its soul one of your knives?
The highest standards of craftsmanship. If it isn't superb, it never leaves the shop. Only the very best leave my shop. We're much more scientific now. We understand that it's not demons and spirits that make a blade good or bad. We understand what occurs on a molecular level when we heat steel up and quench it suddenly. We understand how the heating or thermal cycling process from hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold refines grain structure in the metal. All of these things go into making a world-class knife.
So this is science.
Yeah, what I love about this is I wear so many different hats. I'm a woodworker, a leather worker, a metallurgist, a machinist, a blacksmith, a leather worker, a jeweler, a marketing, not guru, obviously, but I just wear so many different hats. It never gets boring.
Are you as busy as you want to be?
Yes, yes, I am. I think I'm right where I'd like to be. I sell everything I make. I sell it for a very good price. I can make an honest living at it. I'll never get rich at it. But then again, what's rich? You know, I'm my own boss. I hunt and fish quite a bit. I get to go meet great people. I don't know. I think I'm probably better off than guys with millions of dollars in the bank. It's been a really good life so far. And, you know, I get to create.
Yeah.
And that's something I've done since I was a kid.
By the way, you can feel the heat of the blade here.
So what I'm doing now is I've got a few areas in the blade I just didn't like the way they flowed. So I set them back, and now I'm bringing it back down so I have a nice pleasing curve right
Very
there.
nice.
It's a very clean curve. And then I'll true it from that side. And now I'm going to come back and fix this. Okay.
How much time can you have invested in a knife? And
The Bowie knife I showed you earlier with the sheath and everything is almost 2 months.
wow.
So, I mean, I've got friends that have spent literally an entire year on one knife. And that one knife will sell for anywhere between 30 and 100,000. But that's an entire year of your life invested in that project. And I've not worked on one that long. I think the longest I've worked on one was probably about 3.5 months. So what I'm doing right now is refining that choil and refining the edge. And you can see we went from a little over 1/4 of an inch thick on the edge to probably about 35 to 40 thousandths. And we'll straighten that all up. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm working at cooler and cooler temperatures.
I have noticed that.
Yeah, now I'm going to make a hot cut. So we're going to leave ourselves plenty of tang here. And I'll make a cut there. Okay, then I'll roll it up and get lined up perfectly. Make a cut there. Then I'll roll up and make a cut there. Okay. And see, now I can make sure that I'm cutting in the same groove because I have a visual aid. Now I'll use a shearing blow to pop that loose. And off it goes. line up with the anvil as I start to put the tang in. When I first started this, it was very hard to find power hammers. And because of that, many of us had to build our own equipment. Now, it's become such a rage that there's folks, you can buy hammers all over. I'm going to move in here to this little hammer.
Move out of your way here.
And I'm going to start to draw the tang on it. So now we'll continue to bring the tang in, finish that up, and I'll probably do it under this hammer here. So this is where we're pretty much ended up on this. We'll let it cool on the anvil. I'll do the rest of the thermal cycling and heat treating at a later time because it'll take a full day.
Okay, sure, to finish that, yeah.
Yeah.
So then from here, what happens next?
From here, sometimes I'll heat treat direct from the forging. Quite often, actually, as I've become a better smith, I'll quite often heat treat directly from this point. The common practice is to take this, run a quick anneal on it, and then grind it, then hand finish it, or grind it, then heat treat it, then hand finish it, then start to put the guard and handle and the other elements of the knife together. And I have some examples.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of your finished knives if we could now,
sure,
James.
Absolutely.
James, we were forging knives, and now we're in your finishing room. You call this your clean room.
My clean room, yeah, my so-called clean room. It's not always clean.
What are we looking at?
So this is a knife that I designed back when I was guiding. I call it the Outfitter. And it over several years, this is what my perfect hunting knife morphed into. It worked very well for me and since has become a favorite of a lot of the local ranchers around here.
So you're worried about design, you're worried about balance, and you literally manufacture every part of this knife.
Absolutely, yes, yes. The blade is forged. It's a differential temper. I do all my own heat treating. So we have a hard edge and a softer back. The softer back supports the harder edge. So you have a ductile knife that still has the cutting ability of the higher Rockwell hardness. The bronze is silicon, the guard is silicon bronze, and the handle is micarta because it's resistant to oils and solvents, blood, grease. This is one of the toughest handle materials I think there is, and it works superbly on a working grade hunting knife.
And even though you manufacture many of these styles of knives, no two knives are the same.
No, they never come out exactly the same. Each is a one-of-a-kind knife. So this would be my entry-level knife. I have some Bowie knives here. This is a Bowie knife that went to a gun maker.
What does it mean to be a Bowie knife, for those that don't know?
Well, a Bowie knife commonly is the type of knife associated with Jim Bowie, who the knife was named after. Typically, it's a larger knife, clip point blade, typically, not always. They'll often have a coffin handle, but not always. It's a very, I think, the most American of knives. That's why I love to make them.
You're a jeweler also.
Well, I would hesitate to call myself a jeweler, but this is actually the same material as the handle. Okay. It's African blackwood, and I inlaid it into a white bronze, what we call a frog. This hangs in the belt, so you slide this between the belt and your waist. And this is a nickel silver throated and tipped leather sheath with my engraving around the perimeter on the throat and tip. And then this is a takedown Bowie knife, so you can unscrew this and the entire knife will break down into its component parts. And people ask me why I do that. Well, number one, if I ever have to refinish the blade, it makes it easier to refinish. But the main reason is the cool factor. To be able to build a knife accurately enough to be able to disassemble it completely and then have it snap right back together perfectly tickles my little heart.
Sure.
So to produce the shimmer, what is done is I cut with a chainsaw file alternating grooves on each side of the blade and then forge that blade back down to a very fine edge that raises and lowers the layers and then gives it that shimmer or toothed effect that you can see running along the edge. It's a very old pattern that's been done for 1,000 years probably.
I wonder if we can see if by moving it back and forth, you can certainly see the light reflecting and.
So, yeah, and that's a mark of a little bit more care and attention to detail to be able to see that.
The sheath. You also manufacture the leather sheath and all that goes with it. We can see the design, the intricate design also that you manufacture into not only the metal but also the leather.
Right. This is cut engraving that I do myself. This is a running leaf border. It's a very simple pattern, but somewhat deceiving because to figure out how to make it flow seamlessly around a complete area caused me a little bit of trouble actually when I was making the knife. And then this sheath, I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. There's 13 or 14 components in this sheath itself. They're all brought together to make one homogeneous sheath.
James, your craftsmanship is stunning.
Thank you.
This is a passion for you.
Absolutely.
If people want to learn more about you, how can they reach you?
They can either go to the American Bladesmith Society website, and I have a profile on there, a very brief one, or you can call me at 307-649-2394.
And as we close, our viewers are looking at some of the beautiful pictures that you've taken of some of the other knives that you've created. And I think you are an artist, but I understand your difference between being an artist and a craftsman. They're just beautiful.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you
surely appreciate it.
so much for joining us on Wyoming Chronicle.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.